Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maya, and on behalf of Carasoft Technology, I would like to welcome you to our webinar. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. The audio portion of this webinar can be heard through your computer speakers, and all lines have been muted to reduce any background noise. If you would like to ask a question throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and you will receive a link via email following the webinar. To tell you a little bit more about Carasoft, we are a trusted government IT solutions provider delivering software and support solutions to federal, state, local, and education customers. Carasoft maintains dedicated teams to support sales and marketing for all of its vendors. Our contact information will be at the end of the presentation, so please do not hesitate to call or email us for any of your needs. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our first presenter of the day, Graham.
Hey, so thanks first off, Maya, I appreciate it. And thank you everybody for joining us today to learn a little bit about how to simplify your Salesforce development process. As Maya mentioned, my name is Graham Posey and I'm a senior sales engineer here with Copado. I have about 7 years on the Salesforce platform. Most of which was spent as a Salesforce developer. I've actually worked with Copado out in the wild with the software company I worked with before Copado. So I thought I like the tool so much, I might as well come and work for the company. So today I'm also joined by Tarang Sharma, who is a Salesforce and Copado citizen who currently works at CloudQnect. Tarang, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the introduction, Graham. So hello, everyone. My name is Tarang Sharma, and I'm a senior Salesforce consultant, as well as a lead implementation manager for Copado projects here at CloudQnect. So at CloudQnect, like I mentioned before, we are a Copado implementation partner, and I've personally worked on more than a dozen implementations for public sector companies that are looking for CI/CD tooling or even looking to mature in their DevOps processes. So I've been a part of the Salesforce ecosystem for more than 6 years, 3 as an in-house admin, and Copado was actually a deployment tool of choice at my previous company. And then the last 2 years, I've been working within the consulting space.
Nice. Well, happy to have you here with me today. We also have Prashant Gupta with us today from the state of Ohio, and he's going to talk about his personal experience with simplifying the Salesforce development process through DevOps. Prashant, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, guys. Happy to be here. Prashant Gupta here. I am one of the tech leads at the state of Ohio. Ohio Business Gateway is the division I work for. We recently implemented Copado as our DevOps tool. In terms of my background, a technical guy, I've been working with Salesforce maybe few years, I guess, and then mostly before that, mostly on the IT side, for all 20 years of experience, I would say. But yeah, happy to be here and share my experience.
Nice. Well, happy to have you guys both here with me today. So actually, oops, I skipped the agenda. So our agenda today is going to actually be pretty straightforward. I know you're all here to learn about how to simplify your Salesforce development process, and the spoiler alert is that the answer is going to be DevOps. So with that in mind, we'll cover the basics of DevOps and how it fits into the current Salesforce ecosystem. Then you'll hear a little bit about some of the common challenges and pains that we hear from public sector. And then we'll share the story of Ohio Business Gateway. And then Prashant will give us some actionable tips and tricks to send everybody on their way to DevOps enlightenment. So I know we have a lot to cover, so let's just go ahead and jump right in. Obviously, agencies exist to serve citizens. I don't have to tell you guys that. But unlike the private sector, your end users are typically citizens. And unlike the private sector, a lot of your projects are actually driven by campaign promises, taxpayer funding, or legislation. Because of this, we all know that you guys have to act fast, efficiently, securely, and most importantly, cost effectively. But you guys are only human, right? And often there aren't enough of you smart people to go around for these projects.
Hold on, Graham. Wasn't the low-code revolution supposed to fix this? So we all know that Salesforce is easy to use. There's so much self-paced training available online, things like, Trailhead. And it's a platform that's extensible and available to use for a wide variety of use cases. But I'd say it's common now that organizations no longer have to engage in a war for talent because we now have citizen developers.
Nice. So I guess the answer to your question about the low code revolution, Tarang, is yes and no. So the increasing customer and for public sector citizen expectation for a better digital experience is making digital transformation imperative more now than ever. I think we all know that innovation is increasingly happening on low code SaaS platforms like Salesforce, right? Technologies like Salesforce and a couple other SaaS platforms are really fueling this growth because businesses or agencies can now move faster and the development can actually be driven by business analysts and citizen developers who are the closest to your end users and your lines of business. So kind of the days of only developers actually doing the Salesforce development and the deployments and writing all the code are actually coming to an end.
You know what, Graham, you're right. Over the past decade, we've seen low-code platforms such as Salesforce allow many more people to build without necessarily needing programming skills. So you can think of things like Flow Builder, right? Which at face value, it is great, but it can also be done alongside pro code, and it opens up a whole world of people to new jobs and companies to faster innovation. However, if you get enough of these people building a lot of simple things without clear processes and guardrails, it stops being simple very quickly. So complexity within environments, it increases exponentially as more people contribute to a system.
Yeah. And here's the thing, we want to keep all those people contributing, right? The more people contributing to innovation means broader viewpoints and ideally bigger and faster outputs, right? Agencies that actually want to explore some kind of digital transformation, they need smart, skilled people to actually do that work, but they also need guardrails, right? And for all its democratization of technology, low coders still experience the same issues as pro coders. It's not unique to pro coders. But DevOps solutions for pro coders have actually been available and kind of common for years within pro code technologies and platforms. But DevOps has been a little slower to develop on a lot of the SaaS platforms, Salesforce being one of them. So it really leaves this huge gap in the speed at which low code teams can quickly, securely, and efficiently do their work. I myself have actually experienced these problems. And we commonly see a lot of our customers come to us with these problems. So issues like being siloed across teams or no common systems across teams, a lot of manual steps in the process can all cause developers, pro coders and low coders to work long hours into the weekend to meet deadlines or maybe worse, actually do some rework. And that's really hard on businesses, right? But for the public sector, the stakes are a lot higher. It's not just a new idea or a new product that determines what you guys are working on. It could be something that is huge, like a national emergency, right? If we think about COVID and all the executive orders that came with it, because of these projects and because they're so imperative, they require the turnaround to be rapid and efficient. Again, think about COVID. How quick did we need solutions out for that? And unlike the private sector, who kind of has the leisure of unlimited budgets sometimes, or even the capacity to extend timelines, public sector rework and missing deadlines and timelines probably definitely have a bigger impact. And they could have impacts like, overspending taxpayers' money or political implications.
So I think we skipped over one slide. If you can go back, Graham.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, no problem. So that's exactly something that we want to talk about here, right? These additional challenges that public sector teams may face, right? So all development teams, they're already working their tails off to compensate for the challenges of things that Graham mentioned previously, right? So siloed people, processes, and technologies. But public sector teams are also facing additional challenges that we have outlined here. So the first is higher stakes, right? So the byproduct of citizens not being able to accomplish what they need to has consequences, right? So unhappy citizens and frustrated employees can lead to dissatisfaction with the state's services if things aren't functioning correctly. So with that, ultimately, the stakes are high, right? Not only financially, but politically as well. The state needs to be internally efficient and responsible with its funds, since it is public funded, right? And any mismanagement could lead to financial issues and have downstream consequences. So the next is process immaturity. And what this means is, well, the lack of a mature DevOps process possesses risks that could result in downtime, right? And like I previously mentioned, it directly impacts end users, right? They might be unable to access essential documents like tax information during these downtimes. So without a proper development pipeline and proper change management processes, changes made directly within a production environment, it turns these end users or citizens into makeshift quality assurance testers, which adds to the inefficiencies and risks. So this next point might resonate a lot with you that are on the call as well, is that we typically see that public sector teams, they're very risk averse, right? And it's good to be risk averse, but a risk averse attitude, it might hinder growth and progress as well, right? You need that room for experimentation, and if you don't have that room for experimentation, overcoming challenges could become a daunting task. And the final one is just security, right? So security is one of PubSec teams' biggest challenges, particularly for federal level agencies that must adhere to strict standards. So failure to use a FedRAMP approved tool can lead to compliance issues and potentially security breaches as well. And third-party tools that work in conjunction with platforms like Copado automate security checks, but manual scans and integrations can consume valuable developer time, which ultimately would divert attention away from creating new functionalities and features. And so while DevOps itself can't completely overcome things like risk aversion or the simple fact of higher stakes for public sector agencies, the right DevOps strategy can shift the paradigm and ultimately improve end user experience.
Yeah, and what we've seen, it really is that easy, right? You want to simplify your Salesforce development, bring in the time-tested DevOps methodology, and that's what we're looking at right here, right? So when we talk about DevOps, we're talking about a combination of people, process, and technology to improve the software delivery cycle for platforms like Salesforce. Every team, no matter who they are, on their journey to be agile, efficient, cost-effective, secure, all those things that we were talking about earlier, can only get there by building the capacity to build. And it's that capacity that's created by technology, people, and process working together in harmony. That's what we call DevOps, and DevOps really enables state and local agencies to increase their capacity to realize the expectations of their citizens by unblocking process constraints that Tarang was talking about earlier. And some of those constraints might be automating deployments, right? Automating testing, coordinating teams, which ultimately all of those kind of reduce the time to delivery, which is what we're after. So our goal in DevOps, and really on just this webinar, is very simple, right? We want to help you get the most out of your Salesforce implementation. A DevOps tool like Copado typically does this by aligning your business goals with your technology execution. And this allows you to measure your digital transformation strategy centered around that Salesforce platform. So imagine that, right? Having the ability to unify your delivery team, including admins, developers, architects, and maybe even your CIO around a natively built DevOps platform that is created specifically for Salesforce. So now that we've seen kind of high level how imperative DevOps is for the public sector, let's actually take a dive into and hear directly from a Salesforce customer who has recently completed their Salesforce DevOps strategy with an implementation of Copado. So Tarang, why don't you bring us into that?
Yeah, absolutely. Before that, one thing I actually just want to touch on as well is just the long-term results with DevOps, right? So when a DevOps strategy is part of a broader push for digital transformation, it increases the success of the project as a whole, right? And essentially, there are three pillars that are the foundation of DevOps, and those three pillars aren't a sequential recipe. So you might be wondering, what do I mean by that, right? So you can think of it like this. Like a stool needs three legs to stand, so does your DevOps success, right? So Graham was mentioning before, like products, processes, and people, they're all interconnected and they all reinforce each other and they're all equally essential. And products do make transformation possible, but it's people and processes who bring change to fruition, right? So in the end, until your leaders adapt agile and continuous improvement mindsets and shift your whole culture, your team won't be enabled to drive change that truly leads to digital transformation. And so, yeah, what Graham was talking about before. Thank you, Graham. It's my pleasure now to introduce Prashant Gupta, who is a talented software dev specialist at the Ohio Department of Administrative Services, who recently worked on their Ohio Business Gateway project. So welcome again, Prashant.
Thank you.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about the mission of Ohio Business Gateway?
Yeah, thank you, Frank. So Ohio Business Gateway basically provides businesses, online systems where they can file their tax returns and make payments. So essentially helping them simplify their business relationship with the government agency. So we're providing them basically online services where people can come in, register their businesses, file their taxes, payments. So it's like a portal for them. And that's what basically our Ohio Business Gateway provides for them.
Okay, nice. And how long have you guys been using Salesforce at your organization?
It's been a little over 5 years now.
Oh, okay. And tell us a little bit about how Salesforce has improved the work that you do.
Yeah, thank you. So prior to Salesforce, we had a typical like a legacy application, like if you take a .NET or something like that. There's basically you got the application stack, you got the got the infrastructure, all of that to maintain. So basically, there's a lot of I would say technical depth involved there. With Salesforce, it's a SaaS platform, like you guys already discussed. It's on the cloud, so basically your domain object model is taken care of. Your infrastructure is taken care of, processes is taken care of. So basically, you're more free to build your application stack on top of the platform. And Salesforce basically gives us a very good, robust, time and tested platform for building community portals. That's what our Ohio Business Gateway is. Everything's on cloud. We also have cloud-based middleware integration, so that way we're able to build microservices quickly. So comparatively, the development effort is quite reduced because we're not maintaining the infrastructure. It's all on the cloud, and it's much more faster turnaround time for us.
Okay, nice. And since I was part of the Copado implementation with you guys, I can firsthand attest to this, that the Ohio Business Gateway team, you guys were pretty ahead in terms of your DevOps maturity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about your processes before bringing in a CI/CD tool?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, typically we are an agile shop, so basically we have we use Microsoft Azure DevOps as our lifecycle management tool. So all our dev artifacts, the Git integration is all on the Azure DevOps. All our project lifecycle is also in Azure DevOps. So it's pretty much managed through Azure DevOps. They basically, except the legacy components which are using, we still have some of the legacy being used on Jenkins, but otherwise pretty much everything is managed from the Azure DevOps. So the build process, everything is from that one place. So again, we use Agile, like I mentioned. So pretty much from that perspective, we are pretty much in that aspect of it.
Okay. And so what were some of the challenges that brought you to expand your DevOps practices?
Yeah, thank you. I think a couple of key things I would like to point out is with this process with Salesforce, we had a pretty much a manual build process, basically. We didn't have an automated build process. The lack of traceability is another big pain point. We have so many environments, we don't know what code is where, basically, even though it's there, but then it's very difficult to go and pinpoint unless you go start comparing. Synchronization is another one. Basically, you got different environments, and we don't know if the code is here or there. Pretty much the same thing, I would say, lack of traceability. And there's a whole lot of, in terms of deployment process, since it's a manual process, it was in terms of the delivery time was higher. So basically, every time somebody has to move the code from one environment to another one, it was taking a lot of time. They had to extract the code. So those are some of the key aspects, I would say, that helped us to look at a more CI/CD process, because we are not being efficient, especially if something comes along and we have to quickly deploy. It takes a lot of lead time for us.
Okay, and you just actually finished the implementation of Copado, right? So how did that go?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was pretty, like, we were on schedule. We had pretty much everything went on time. We didn't hit any road bumps. Everything was smooth. Definitely, there was a little bit of learning adoption process, but other than that, I think we didn't see any major showstoppers, I would say.
Okay, and you just recently had your first release with Copado as well, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we had a hot fix release that we deployed to Copado. We basically took it through the entire pipeline, back promoted it, so it was all good. We're having our first major release sort of coming up this week, so that'll be basically a good another way to take it to Copado.
Okay, and what role did CloudQnect play in this process, and what would you say to agencies who might be considering going at it alone in terms of their implementations?
Yeah. So CloudQnect was definitely the implementation partner. They're working with us. They came in and basically looked at our business processes and then basically did a DevOps assessment, gave the recommendations, and pretty much had a nice, I would say, a customized playbook in terms of implementation. Everything was scheduled. We knew exactly how things were, what are the things there. So there are no surprises with that approach. We basically knew exactly how things are going to flow, what are going to come up. So we are all prepared from that perspective, taking into consideration what our current setup is. So the training environment was definitely a good, we've set that up first, so that way people have hands-on experience how to use Copado. And then that also helped us open up some of the challenges we would face in actual production. So that strategy really helped us to basically stay ahead of the actual implementation. Mm-hmm. So I would say definitely it's some of the really helped us to get this project, off the finish line pretty quickly.
Absolutely. And so what's next for the DevOps practices at Ohio Business Gateway?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we just early and still in the adoption process right now. For our immediate goal right now is to look at basically trying to fully automate the deployment process. At this point, we're still trying to get it manually done. But yeah, that's our next goal, is to make it more streamlined, make it more automated deployment. So that way, once this go to production, it basically already back promoted automatically. Also, the long-term goal, we will to include more automated processes like testing and code coverage kind of tools. So those on the horizon, I would say.
Awesome. And finally, Prashant, any tips or advice to other federal, state, or local agencies that are on this webinar that are looking to improve their DevOps practices? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, definitely my 2 cents here is with this Copado tool will definitely help us to really improve your CI/CD process. With the tool, we were at least able to implement, like a left shift kind of strategy. So basically everything earlier was an afterthought, but now with the tool, we're able to basically take that and bring it to the left of things. So basically quality control is one of them that we implemented. So basically you cannot push code unless you meet certain quality lines. So those we are able to bring all of those, and upfront, and then basically so that way when it comes to deployment, there are no surprises, right? It should be a smooth clicking of a button. So that definitely the tool helps us. There's a lot of traceability there, a lot of transparency is there. We can look at the pipeline and tell exactly where the code is and who has it or where it's supposed to be, versus there's no guesswork. So the guesswork has been taken out. There is more predictability with the process here. Again, more reportability is there, so we can really measure this, how long it's taken. So there's a lot of good aspects of the tool I definitely want to recommend and find out.
Awesome. That's all the questions I have for you, Prashant. So Graham, I'll pass it back over to you.
Yeah, that was great. That was great. And thanks for those tips, Prashant. I always love hearing stories about successful implementations that are typically coupled with a smooth DevOps process. So that was really cool to hear. So kind of a segue to that, now that we've seen firsthand how beneficial a streamlined DevOps process can be, let's talk a little bit about how you can actually advocate for change to either start or improve your Salesforce DevOps journey. So first and foremost, right, look for a timeline. Anytime there's a timeline or a deadline, things get done. We know that. So what's your compelling event? If you're thinking back to the story that Prashant just told, their compelling event was they had several projects coming up that were definitely mission critical. And those projects really helped drive a timeline for making a change. The second one is talk to Salesforce, right? Salesforce obviously wants you to be successful using Salesforce. So talk with them about what your gaps are and where you're currently struggling, and they can definitely help you find a tool that's right for you to actually fill in those gaps. SIs are a huge one. Bring in SIs to help advocate for change, right? I know that a lot of agencies use SIs. So if you're outsourcing contracts to them, then they're probably having the same pains as you. So bring them in to help advocate for that change. Talk with similar or related agencies, right? Find out what their issues are, what problems they're currently having, and how they're even either resolving or have resolved them in the past. And then if they're directly related to your organization and you guys might share a Salesforce production environment, try and join forces and create that development of a Salesforce COE. We typically see a lot of agencies working together with that COE. So it's always powerful to have that. And then finally, find a platform or a tool that's devoted to DevOps like Copado, right? So Copado, just once again, it's a Salesforce native CI/CD solution that's authorized for federal agencies. Copado definitely makes it easy to streamline and scale digital transformation like we talked about earlier. And we do that through our native Salesforce DevOps platform. And one of the coolest and best parts about Copado is it is the only FedRAMP authorized Salesforce CI/CD solution out there. So as the above quote mentions, we're definitely committed to improving DevOps and eliminating inefficiencies within the public sector. So with that, Tarang, I do want to thank you for co-hosting this session with me and taking the time away from I know what is a very, very, very busy schedule for you. I always appreciate your insights and experience when it comes to kind of helping those in the public sector simplify their Salesforce development. And Prashant, it's always so wonderful for our audience to actually get a chance to hear an actual customer and talk about your journey and your experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yep. Yeah, thank you guys again. And I'm going to turn it back over to Maya at Carousel to move to the Q&A portion of our event.
All right, we are now going to move into the Q&A portion of our webinar. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A pod down below and we'll do our best to answer them live. We'll give you a minute or two to enter your questions now. All right, it looks like we got our first question. It is, are there any best practices when needed to manage the pipeline or setup and deployment CPQ via Copado CI/CD?
So I can handle that one. So I mean, I guess CPQ kind of has two kind of, it uses data and then it also uses metadata, right? So with CPQ, if you're touching and customizing metadata, you can obviously use the Copado pipeline exactly how you would use it with any other metadata. So the same best practices that would apply to, just your regular metadata like profiles, permission sets, Apex classes would typically apply to CPQ metadata. Now, the other one would be, moving that CPQ config data with, a tool like Copado Data Deploy. And I won't jump in too much into that and get on the technical weeds, but we do have a tool called Copado Data Deploy that helps with CPQ config data. So as you're moving that metadata up your pipeline, you always want to kind of take that config data, which is just data that acts as metadata, along with it. So I would say best practices is try to kind of incorporate that in one fell swoop, right? Tie automations to your user story that's going to take care of that config data along with your metadata. I'm not sure if any of the other guys have anything to add.
No, I think that's a perfect answer, Graham.
Any other questions?
Great. Our next question is, are there any source for deployment of CPQ?
Can you say that again, Maya? Sorry, one more time.
Are there any sources for deployment of CPQ?
Oh, okay, so that kind of hits on the last question that we asked. So yeah, we do, like I said, there's kind of two aspects of CPQ where there's the metadata aspect, which we definitely help with. That's our bread and butter, is getting metadata up and down your pipeline, whether it's custom metadata tied to CPQ. The other one, like I talked about, is that config data, right? It's that data that acts as data. So like price books, price book entries, price options, everything with CPQ is that data that acts like metadata. And we have a tool called Copado Data Deployer that definitely helps with that. So there's a lot of automations you can embed in your pipeline that interact with the data deploy tool that allows you to automate a lot of the process that you typically would have to do manually with like data loader and spreadsheets and all that stuff.
And this, Prashant, I just have to second that. Basically, we're just using data deploy in our implementation for the same reason. So historically, data loader is good, but again, going across environments, adding new records, there's a bunch of lookups to be done. But with data deploy tool, it's pretty easy. You just create a template and then it pulls all the data for you.
Yep.
And directly into them.
It allows you to keep and maintain that relationship between other objects as well. So you're not having to do 15 deployments for 15 different objects. You can daisy chain a lot of this and just do one deployment of that configuration data without having to replicate it multiple times. So it sounds like we have a lot of CPQ users out there. So I would recommend you guys check out Data Deploy and see if that'd be a tool that would help you.
Great, thank you, Graham. Our next question is, what kind of training or support is available for government agencies looking to implement Salesforce DevOps with Copado?
Nice. So the first thing that I do want to call out is how big the Copado community is, right? We have over 75,000 professionals. So if you run into an issue, chances are somebody else has probably run into that issue, already. So it's a massive network that really works together to kind of solve problems before you actually have to go digging and kind of search out in the documentation. Now, Copado also has its own academy, right? And that academy is really similar to Trailhead. So it allows developers or admins to kind of complete these modules at their own pace. So if you really want to go in and you want to kind of learn about Copado, I would say that's a really good way to do it. Sign up for, whatever persona aligns more with what you're doing at work and just kind of complete some of those modules so you can get hands-on training. And it's 100% free.
Great, thank you. And our next question is, how does Copado integrate with other tools or systems commonly used by the public sector, such as identity management or case management systems?
Okay, yeah, so that's, obviously security is huge in the public sector, and Copado out of the box integrates with tons of security tools. But for integrations with tools that kind of are not included with out of the box functionality, we have something called Copado Devops Exchange. So think of it as like the Salesforce app exchange, where we've had even internal developers and even people in the community come in and build out these integrations with third-party toolings, especially like security tools. So these integrations and all the heavy lifting that you'll need for these security tools are actually already built out and they're native to Copado already. So the DevOps Exchange is really, really powerful. And I think it hosts right now dozens of apps and pre-built integrations, and then a handful to security tools. I think Checkmarks is on there already, CodeScan, DigiSec. I think that's just a handful of them. So we definitely integrate with I would say the majority of security tools that you would need as a development team out there.
Awesome, thank you. Well, that looks like a wrap up on our event. Thank you to the Copado and CloudQnect team for your insights today. I'd like to thank all of our participants for joining us. We hope this information was helpful to you and your organization. Our contact information is displayed on the screen, so please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.